Well, good morning again, and we're so glad you're with us on this rainy day, but there's joy inside this house, inside this place, and we're glad to be part of all that God is doing here at Long Hill Chapel. My name is Michael. I'm the lead pastor here, and I just am so glad you're here. If you're our guest for the first time, once again, welcome. Thank you for being with us. We are closing out a series which has a sandcastle involved in it, so that's been our summer series, and all good things must come to an end. And so Still Standing has been our summer series on a simple and very challenging topic for us, which is how do we endure? How do we endure in the face of all sorts of different things? And that's really what we've been looking at for the summer. You know, one of the things that all of us in this room pretty much we have in common is we've spent some time in a waiting room. You spent some time in some waiting rooms. I got my oil changed on Friday, and I spent some time in quite the waiting room. I went to the DMV to get my license renewed a few weeks ago, and boy, did I ever spend some time in a waiting room. You know, you can do that thing now in New Jersey where you make the appointment. It's like, great, I'm going to make the appointment. It'll be quick. I'll be in and out. I was in one line that snaked all the way outside the building. And then I got through and I talked to some people and I got put into a second line. Then I got put into a third line. Then I talked to some other people who gave me some things to fill out. And then I got to sit and wait for my number to be called. Do you feel me, church? And so we've all spent some times in waiting rooms. Sometimes it's the doctor's office. Sometimes it's an auto dealer where they have the last tube television that you've ever seen in your life on the wall, and it is somehow replaying standard definition, like 4:3 aspect square reruns of Walker, Texas Ranger. And so you're sitting there trying to get into the plot of Walker, Texas Ranger. You're waiting and you're waiting. You're flipping through old magazines from 2006, sitting in chairs that seemed like they were designed as medieval torture devices more than furniture. And you're watching Judge Judy or whatever it is on the television, and you're beginning to think, could someone just get me out of here? Could someone just get me out of here? We've been in this series about endurance. And that's a small example of endurance. We're sitting there, we're saying, you know, if I can just hang on, if I can hang on until I get out of here, things will be a lot better. I think one of the challenges that we as people, especially we as Christians, we as followers of Jesus, we face is we think that life is just about hanging on. We think it's about just getting through the next day or the next week or getting to the weekend. I mean, all of us can relate very much to that. It's just getting to the next thing. And as Christians, as we've just sung about the hope that we have in Jesus, it's easy to look at our circumstances, as complicated as they always are, and just say, if I can just hang on till the end, if I can just hang on till heaven, if I can just pass the time doing whatever I can do to get through this, I can make it. But the scriptures, God's word, teaches us something different. And it's this idea that's going to frame our time together. Your life isn't like a waiting room. It's a lot more like a racetrack. It's not a waiting room. It's not Walker, Texas Ranger. It's like when you step onto the field. And it's a racetrack. And it's something that we walk, we run, but we are always taking steps. And as we close out our series today, we're looking at a passage from the New Testament, book of Hebrews. And Hebrews is it was more of a letter. It was written to Jewish Christians who were trying to figure out what Jesus meant for them and how, as a result of who Jesus was and what he had done, they could therefore live. And it's kind of a densely packed theological book. And the writer goes on for 11 chapters showing what Jesus meant and what it meant for this particular group of people and what he did. And then there's the hinge point at the end of chapter 11 into chapter 12 where he begins to ask this question. You've heard all of this. Now, what do you do? What do you and I do? And a waiting room is not the picture that we're given. It's a race. We've been given purpose, friends. Not just to wait it out, not just to survive, but to run the race that God has marked out for us with endurance. Now, when I say that word purpose, we all love to have a purpose. Very few of us, we don't want to be purposeless people. And sometimes when we look at what we're facing in the lives that we live every single day, we ask a question that goes like this: if I could see the purpose in this, if I could see the purpose in this difficult relationship I have with my kids, if I could see the purpose in the conflict I'm having with my boss at work or my coworkers, if I could see the purpose in suffering in my own life, in my own body, if I could see the purpose of all of the difficulty that is going on in the world, the suffering, the pain, and the struggle, if I could see the purpose in that, if I could see where the end is, I could endure. I could make it through. I could keep going. And you're not wrong to ask that question. Because when we can see purpose, we can endure nearly anything. If we see how things end, even if the path seems dark and it seems complicated, we can keep going. But there's something that we miss about purpose, and it's this: there's actually a catch when it comes to purpose. And the kind of purpose that helps us actually endure is a different kind of purpose than we would ever expect. And so today we are reflecting on this question: how do I persevere through all of life, the mountaintops and the valleys, but do it with purpose? I'd love to invite David Kennedy, who is our Director of Missions and Community Care. He's our Missions and Community Care Coordinator here at Long Hill Chapel. He's going to read from the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, 39 to 40, into chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. David.
Good morning. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that we only together with us would they be made perfect. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart.
Thank you, David. And so we see the hinge point here in the passage that we just looked at. We see the hinge between something that happened before and something that happens after. We're going to get into that in just a minute. But when it comes to this, we've all had these moments of questioning, why me? Why now? Am I doing it right? Am I even in the right place? And in those moments, it's not like we completely give up. Very few of us give up. But we start to move to the periphery of our lives. We start to move to the sidelines. We start to move to the seats. We begin to disengage, to wait it out. And I don't think any of us want to do this, but oftentimes we find ourselves living like this. And the circumstances make us want to do that. But God has a desire. He has a part to play in our race, and he has a way for us to run, to live in purpose right now. Now, this sounds like a TED Talk so far. This sounds like it's vaguely inspiring, and there's a good thing we can go and do, and we can discover it, and we can go out these doors, and we can go into a new phase of our lives. And here's the challenge and the problem with that is the purpose that God has given you is not always glamorous. It's not always the one that you and I want. Sometimes it's not even desirable. It's not even something that we would choose on our own. Sometimes it means being misunderstood. Sometimes it means that we're going to struggle. Sometimes it means that we're going to feel like we're utterly alone. But you're running a race. And in any race, in any athletic sports team, Every player, every person has a role to play. When I was a kid, I played youth soccer. And I started when I was 6 years old. And the summary of my preparation to play youth soccer at the age of 6 was we showed up at the game and they said, go stand over there. And, if the ball comes your way, you can kind of do this. And if it goes over here, you can kind of do this. I was back on the defensive line. And so that was the start of my illustrious soccer career, was that. But about a year into this, we played soccer. The fields were on the edge of town, and it was kind of on these sandy bluffs where very often the grass would just be stripped away, and there'd be this sandy dirt that was kind of exposed. And about when I was 7 years old, I decided that my purpose on the soccer team was to create a smoke screen so that the other team couldn't find the ball or the goal. So I decided that was what I was going to do with my life. It was right there in front of me. There was all sorts of the right materials were there. And I said, this is the moment that I was created for, to obscure everybody else and to be a smokescreen. And so I took on this whole phase of my life where all I did in soccer was kick dirt. I kicked dirt everywhere. I kicked it up the field. I kicked it down the field. I kicked it everywhere. And at some point, I think the long-suffering volunteer coaches, by the way, if you're a volunteer coach for a sports team in this room, God bless you. God bless you. We are thankful for you. Our kids are thankful for you. It's a hard job. It's a job that very often it feels a lot like corralling chickens. But finally, my coach had enough, and he said, you know what? You have a position that you have to play, and when you're not playing that position and you're over creating smoke screens, the ball gets by where you're supposed to be. There's a weakness in the line. And I really wanted to kick dirt. No one else was kicking dirt. There were a lot of people trying to stand around and do something with the ball, but I wanted to kick dirt, but I had to receive the role that I was going to play on the team. One of the things I tell my son on his teams is I say, you do whatever helps your team. You do whatever the coach asks you to do. You do it with joy, and you do it with the best of your ability. Whether you're pitching, whether you're playing left field, or whether you're sitting on the bench, all of you show up to the place and to the position that you've been given to play. And so we love the idea of purpose, but the reality of it when we're not given the role that we want or the role that we think we deserve in God's purpose, it's much more challenging. And when we fail to see it, when we fail to understand it, we begin to step out of the race. Here's what purpose is. It's very inspiring, right? It's inspiring to say, God has put me on this earth to do this thing. But it's also a little terrifying. Purpose is inspiring, but it's also a little terrifying, because once you sign up for it, now you are responsible. Once you make a commitment, now you're responsible. Some of you in this room have become parents. And once you sign up to that, you realize that it's inspiring. There's a lot of good that comes, but there's also something a little terrifying about it very often, because now you're responsible. In our family, we are a cat family, and my family growing up was a cat family, and my stock just rose with some of you and decreased significantly with others of you. And there was this one moment we decided to try out a dog. And this was just like kind of a dud of a dog. I don't know, maybe we just weren't very good dog parents. But we discovered that dogs are very different than cats. Like cats, you just feed them, you throw some water out, they'll maybe come to you, maybe they won't. It's all on their terms. Dogs need a lot more care. You have to take them out to the bathroom, you have to take them out, and you have to walk them. And so we loved the idea of the dog, but the reality of the dog was different than the idea of the dog. And there's so many things in our lives where the idea is one thing and the reality is another thing. The idea of purpose and the reality of purpose are two different things. And if we don't understand this catch, we don't understand how God does it, we'll miss out. The writer of Hebrews does this interesting thing. Right before the passage that we just read, you could kind of see when David read it, it kind of picked up almost like it felt like in the middle. and then it went somewhere else. It's that hinge point. What the writer of Hebrews does in chapter 11 is he goes back, and it's this passage, in Bible college or in seminary that we call the Faith Hall of Fame. He goes back and he goes through all of these characters from the Old Testament, most of whom have names that we would recognize, like Abraham and Noah. And he goes through and he says, they were faithful. They were faithful. They showed up to the role they'd been given, even when it wasn't the one that they wanted to have. They exhibited tremendous faith. And then he makes this turn at the end. And it would be easy for me to say, you should be like them. Because of Jesus, because of all of the good things he's done, you now have a purpose. But the writer of Hebrews, he turns the corner and he does something really weird, because you think this would be the moment where he'd say, those are the guys and you should be like them, and go team, you can do it. It's like a pep talk, and it seems like he's about to start with one. But then in the middle, he writes this. This is back in Hebrews 11, where he's going on through these characters. He says this: all these people, the people I'm talking about, were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on the earth. This is like the ultimate sad trumpet moment. Wah, wah. It's that moment where it's like inspiring, and then you get down to this verse and it's like, they did all those things and they didn't receive, they didn't see how it ended, they didn't get to the end, they didn't go through all the difficulty and the suffering and the unknown and the questions and the opposition in their lives and then have it pay off. They did not get there. They only saw it out ahead of them. That's really remarkable faith. But then he says this interesting sentence that's easy to just kind of gloss over, like we do very often in the Bible, where you're like, I don't know if that makes sense. Admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on the earth. Admitting that they didn't see things the way God saw them. And some of us today, we're trying to figure out what God is up to in our lives. And one of the best prayers we can pray in those moments of questioning, in those moments of struggle, in those moments of difficulty, is we can pray for new eyes. We can pray that God would show us his vision of our lives, his vision of what's going on, his vision of how it all works out. See how they end the chapter again. This is what we read. It says this: God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. And this is not like one of those just ambiguous, it'll all make sense someday kind of passages. The something better he's talking about there is Jesus. It's the thing he's been talking about for 11 chapters. And it's the fact that the ancients lived by faith, and they did it even before they had Jesus to bring them hope, to bring them new life, to give them hope here in this moment, but also beyond in eternity. And friends, you and I, we have Jesus. He's here. He came for you. And he came for me. And there's a few of you who might be in the room right now who haven't realized that quite yet. That he didn't just come for all of us sort of in this amorphous way. He came for you. He calls you by name. He wants a relationship with you. So you don't just have the teachings of Jesus or the vague moral inspiration of Jesus. You have the person of Jesus, the power of Jesus, the presence of Jesus, the Spirit of Jesus. You have all that, and because you do, because it dwells within you, if you are a Christ follower, if you are one who has named Jesus as your Savior and Lord, there is something you can now do that other people can't do. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, it begins with this word, therefore. And if you've been around me long enough, whenever in the Bible it says therefore, it's really good for us to ask the question, what is the there for? Because of all that we've seen, all that we've read, all that we've experienced before in this book. Therefore, because there's all of these witnesses around us who have gone before us. Some of them are still here. They're testifying to who God is. They're testifying to his faithfulness. Because of all that, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance, endurance, the race marked out for us. And in that race, there will be moments where you won't understand where you're running. You won't understand where you're walking. You want to understand how this gets to the finish line. And in that moment, there's something critical that you and I must do. Verse 2, it says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. There's this interesting thing that we all do. Where you put your focus is where you end up. Where you put your focus, this is not just like a Christian thing, this is like a law of nature thing. Where you put your focus, you'll end up. I don't know if you've ever driven a car, and you're reaching over here for something. Where do you end up going? You end up going towards the side of the road. Or you end up going, if you're going to the left, you end up going into oncoming traffic. If you're looking down, if you're not seeing where you're drifting, you go in a different direction. And by the way, I'm sorry, camera people, I walk all over the stage and I make your job very difficult. So God bless you as well. God bless camera people. God bless youth sports coaches. That's who we're calling out today. But you lose your focus and you end up all sorts of places that you never would have expected. So I love how the passage says, fix your eyes. Where your eyes are focused is where you'll end up, where you'll go. And some of your translations of the Bible say the author and the perfecter of faith. The original language means a little something more like this: the pioneer, the one who went first, the one who did this the first time. Fix your eyes on Jesus, the one who came up with the idea and wasn't just telling us to run the race, but ran the race himself as well. But there's a reason he ran the race, and it's kind of what the rest of the passage talks about. It wasn't so he could win, because he endured the cross, but he scorned its shame, and he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. The reason Jesus ran the race was so he could lose, so that we could win. He ran the race to lose, so that we could win. And this is the part we don't like. So that we can lose, so that others can win. So Jesus came and he didn't win. It would have been great if he just, he showed up on the scene and there was the epic last battle scene, and a can of what was open on all his foes and adversaries and enemies and the Jewish teachers and the Roman authorities. And he did the thing everyone really wanted him to do, but instead he endured the cross, scorning its shame. He lost so that you and I would be set free from the power of sin, the power of death. He lost so that you and I could win. And I think the thing we miss about following Jesus, the thing that gets us off the mark, the thing that has us asking a million questions a lot of the time, is we are called to follow him in the same way. He's the pioneer. He went first. But then we're called to follow. You and I actually are called to lose, so that others can win. This is profoundly unpopular. Nobody sitting in the seats or watching online today is saying, you know what? I want to go do that. We live in a culture where nobody likes to lose. Nobody likes to be a loser. And so this is the call of faith. This is the call of God. This is the call of sacrifice in our lives. And this is where the catch of purpose shows up. This is why we miss it. This is why we head for the waiting room and off of the racetrack very often. You know, I've heard so many stories, and I prayed these prayers, and you've prayed these prayers. You know, God, lead me. I want to run the race, and that's all great until we discover it's not the race that we want to run. It's not the role that we want to play. We want to kick some dirt and make a smoke screen, and the coach is saying, stand over there. Play your part. The ball may come to you, the ball may not, but you're part of a team. And here's the catch. You've been waiting for the catch. God's definition of purpose for you is not an end to itself, and it's not an end for yourself. True purpose is always a means to an end that is not you. True purpose is always a means to an end that is not you. So how does this relate to endurance, though? What's this mean for us enduring in life? If you don't get this, it will be very hard to endure through circumstances. If you are running the race where you are the star of the race, where the race is about you, where the race is about you getting what you want, where the race is about you feeling validated, where the race is about you having the last word, where the race is about you winning. At some point, all of those other things will become so much and so weighty, and you'll end up with so many questions and so much uncertainty, because none of those things will ever make sense. But when you fix your eyes on Jesus, when you recognize that you're called to run the race the way that Jesus did, with faithfulness, but also realizing that you didn't come here to win. You came here to lose so that others could win. And the people around you, especially in our age and especially where we live, they will not understand this for a moment. You know, it's always easy to take another step up the ladder. It is not easy at all to stop and lose so that your wife or your husband and your kids can win. It is always easy to say, you know what, I'm going to accumulate more, I'm going to get a raise, I'm going to invest, I'm going to amass generational wealth for myself. It is profoundly countercultural to say, you know, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to be successful and I'm going to run the race that God has placed in front of me, but I'm going to do it so that I can pour myself out to others, so that I can pour myself out into this local church, so that I can serve my neighbors, so that I can serve those who don't have the thing in front of me that I have. That is profoundly countercultural. That's not something that's popular. There's always something else for us to get. There's always something else for us to encounter and achieve. But to lose so that others can win is something that does not come naturally wherever you are in life. Now, I know in this room there's some of you who are saying, you know, that would be great if I had those champagne problems. I'm just trying to get through tomorrow, trying to make ends meet to the end of the month. I've got this relationship. I've got these kids who I'm just at my wit's end with. I'm in this marriage where we don't see eye to eye at all. And I don't know what I'm going to do next. You know, I've experienced so much loss in my life that it's a good day when I get out of bed and the sun is shining, and I get out the door and I go again. I'm struggling with this physical circumstance, this illness, this disease. I'm trying to get my way out of my own head, and if I do that successfully in a given day, if I win that battle, it's a big deal. You know what, friends? I want you to hear me, if that describes you. Jesus sees you. And I pray that you would see him. And as he calls you out, would he show you that the battle you are fighting was never about you. It was about what he was accomplishing in you. And because of your faithfulness in fighting that, your faithfulness in going the next step, your faithfulness in keeping on and pressing on and going again, you are achieving a great thing. You are achieving something that even the people with all the success and all the things, they cannot compare to what you are doing. God sees you. And he notices you. And it matters. And what you're doing matters. They say, my child, would you get up? Would you go again? So whether you're on top of the world or it feels like you're just trying to get up to zero every single day, would you fix your eyes on Jesus and run the race that he has marked out for you? So as we close today, are you living like the goal is simply to get through life, to get by, even just to get to heaven? What would it look like if you embraced where God has put you, even if it's not the place that you wish you were? If you feel misunderstood, if you feel lonely, if it's hard, because there's a greater purpose that's being worked out. What if you just simply prayed this prayer? God, help me see with different eyes. Help me fix my eyes on you once again. The one who did this first. The pioneer, the perfecter of your faith. Don't quit. Don't shrink your vision. Run with purpose. And together, this is one of the things I love about being part of this church. We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. Some who have passed on to glory, some who are still here, saints who have endured, they've been misunderstood, they've stumbled, they've gotten back out, and yet they've pressed on. What if the way you do that is the thing that makes the difference for someone else? What if you pressed on in God's purpose and it was the story that inspired someone else to press on? Because that's true. God's at work, and he's at work in you. We don't run alone. We run together, and we run to and we run with Jesus, who ran before us for the joy set before him, for the joy set before us. Would you pray with me? God, in this room, we have folks who have been incredibly blessed, and they know it, and they can see it in their lives. And we have folks who are just looking for enough light to make the next step, and we have all points in between. I pray that we as a people, we as a community of faith, with all of the diversity of our backgrounds, of our stories, of the things that are in front of us, of the things that are behind us, of the races that we are running, of the roles that you have called us all to play. I pray today, Lord, that we would fix our eyes on you once again. We would see you for who you are. Our focus would be you. And because of that, we would run a better race. We would take up the place you've put us, even if it's not the place we want to be. And we'd find joy in it. And more than finding joy in it, we'd realize that sometimes and very often our purpose, it's a means to an end that we're not the center of. But when we look back, when others look at us, when the story has been written more, we'll see what you're up to. We'll see why it mattered more than anything we could have imagined. And we'll see the joy. I pray all these things in Jesus' name.